President of the Latino Cannabis Association, Sandra Jaquez. CEO of the Cannabis Place, Osbert Orduña. Co-owner of Conbud, Alfredo Angueda. And now, please join me in welcoming the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Good morning. No, actually, is it? Good afternoon. Joining me today are an extraordinary group of hardworking New York entrepreneurs. Black, Latino, women, immigrant, military, veteran business owners who stake their futures on the legal cannabis industry. They've done everything by the book, and they've waited a long time to fill their dreams of being part of a new, emerging, exciting industry here in the state of New York. But right now, their businesses, their very existence, is under attack by illegal pot shops that seem to line every block, sometimes every other building, in neighborhoods in this city and across the state of New York. These illicit vendors flagrantly violate our laws by selling to kids, evading our taxes, and engaging in fraudulent advertising about their products. Sometimes the products are even laced with dangerous chemicals. I say every day that these shops are open, they endanger public health and hurt people like those standing with me here today. Some of these entrepreneurs or their families were harmed by the long and futile war on marijuana. That was one of the categories that the law was intended to help and empower. And in a few minutes, you'll hear their stories of trying to build in this environment, building a business with a pre-existing market over to run already with bad actors, an unfair competition that has gone on far too long. But first, let's level set where we are in the cannabis rollout. It's been a long journey to get here. Lots of growing pains along the way. When I first took office, nothing had been done to implement New York's new cannabis law, the legal cannabis law. There was no infrastructure. We had to step in, literally plant the seeds, cultivate this budding industry from the ground up. And then just as we were getting the details worked out, regulations took time. It took time to step. Just as everything was moving along, we were finally making progress. I say a group of greedy out-of-state corporate conglomerates who wanted to freeze out the little guy, they got a court order bringing our industry to a screeching halt. Then a series of lawsuits, restraining orders, stopping half the growth in our state were brought in, challenging every aspect of our law and regulations. So we had to spend months, money, time, effort, fighting them in court. And in the process, these lawsuits hurt the farmers. They hurt communities of color who were in the process of building this business. And they hurt local families who put everything they had on the table and putting their dreams of owning their own business on hold. Days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and people started to wonder, is this dream now dead in the state of New York? Will this ever happen? Now, with all the legal battles finally behind us, as recently as December, and hopefully no more, the momentum is finally picking up. 50 licensed dispensaries have been open since the injunction was lifted in December. We'll be up to 80 by Friday. Finally, some progress. But as this young industry takes steps, another threat looms that I mentioned. The illicit shops that blatantly ignore the rules and undermine our efforts to support legitimate, approved business owners. Last year, we worked with the legislature, wanted to do more, but at least we got more fines for the illegal cannabis shops. Much of this was not envisioned in the original law. But we learned over the last year we had to take it a step further. $10,000, $20,000 fines are just too small and they take too long to collect. They have drawn out investigations, months of hearings and appeals before these shops are told to pony up. In the meantime, guess what happens? The doors are still open. The money keeps rolling in. More and more cash keeps going in their doors and not the doors of our legitimate operators. And that's what needs to change. Today I'm renewing my call for stronger measures to enforce our cannabis law, which I first proposed in my State of the State address in January. And I want to give my colleagues in the legislature this message, because we want to work together to make sure this is successful. Let's give states and localities ways that they can padlock the doors, number one, and shut down these flagrant violators. Let's start doing that. Let's start having some teeth. They can appeal their fines, they can appeal their closure, everybody gets due process. But while that plays out in the courts, they would be shuttered and out of business. The padlock stays on. And they'll have to factor that into their business model on whether it makes sense for them to continue. And remember, right now, and this is what's frustrating because we wanted more, but only the Office of Cannabis Management and the Department of Taxation and Finance, which we had to push hard to get even in the law last year, they're the only agencies empowered to enforce our cannabis laws. But by enlisting our localities, places like the city of New York, we'll have exponentially more people investigating and eventually helping shutter these illegal shops. Now, I've heard some comments about how enforcing the law that was written to protect those who are doing it the right way, again, represented by these individuals, that somehow that's going to return to the bad old days of mass incarceration of people of color. And yet over 2/3 of the legal dispensaries we have are minority and women-owned businesses. And last year we doubled the number of legal black-owned dispensaries that exist, not just in New York, doubled the number nationwide because of what we did here in the state of New York. I think that's significant. In fact, New York has more legal dispensaries owned by people directly harmed by disproportionate enforcement of drug laws in communities of color than every other state combined. So that objective is being met. The law was written to help those with prior convictions of family members, as well as veterans, service-disabled veterans who need our help, MWBEs. And that's why, in accordance with the laws, we issued them their licenses first. But what has happened while we're giving these groups priority, it doesn't mean anything. It's pretty hollow if we allow the illegal operators to flood the market with impunity. And that's exactly what happened. These unlicensed shops charge less because they don't pay taxes. Their customer base is large because they market and sell to minors. And you walk into these stores and you'll find products, like ice cream shaped like ice cream cones and chocolate bars and gummy rings. And it's also cheaper for them because they're not doing the quality control and the testing to make sure the product is safe. So that gives them an advantage. They plaster their fake labels on products, so people have no idea. They do not know what's legal and what's not legal. So in reality, enforcement and equity go hand in hand here. They're not at odds. We know who we're trying to protect here. Because when we shut down these illicit dealers, we're putting money back in the pockets of the underrepresented business owners who went through a rigorous licensing process, and I know you have some more stories to tell about that. Those who source their product from New York State farms, we want to help our farmers, who don't market to kids, and who pay their taxes that in turn are channeled into the communities that we're trying to help. And that's what has to happen. It's not about recriminalizing cannabis that's legal here. We're not kicking in doors and hauling off people in handcuffs. We're talking about stronger civil enforcement, which all businesses are subjected to if they don't operate above the law. And finally, I want to talk about another challenge. We were just chatting about this before we came out here. The role of social media and the big tech companies. Right now, they're allowing the sowing of a lot of confusion in the marketplace. I think the vast majority of customers, we hope, will want to buy safe, tested products from licensed dealers. And if you type in cannabis dispensaries in Google Maps or Yelp, you'll get a long list of unlicensed illegal vendors. Now, does anybody have a cell phone on them? Anybody want to show me what that looks like?
I think
Alfredo?
everybody has one.
Oh, I just, kind of a rhetorical
Let's-
question.
Yeah, kind of. Let's
Show
see.
us, Alfredo, show us what that looks like. And people assume just because you see it on Google or one of the trusted platforms that they must be legal, right? It kind of gives you that, oh my gosh. All right, so are all these legal?
No,
Okay, there's our answer.
just based on the map that you, oh, I'm sorry.
No, tell them,
Well, just based on the map that you presented with 50 legal within the state of New York, it's impossible for all those to be legal, especially with the 1,000-foot radius by the regulations. So I would venture to guess about 2/3 of those, or if not more, would be illicit. Brick and mortar
All right.
illicit.
This is what we have to stop. This gives the imprimatur of being legal and legitimate when you see this. And that is false. That is false.
Thank you.
And so they're hurting our legal shops, and we've been in touch with these companies, these platforms, and we've told them flat out, you need to change this. Now, I don't expect them to track down and know who the illegal operators are. They would tell us that they're not required to. So I say to them, let us help you. Let us give you the list of legal vendors. I know who's legal. We all know who's legal. And then you have a responsibility to make sure that you're not posting the location of illegal shops. Now, I'm calling on all these platforms to step up, do the right thing, and be part of the solution. Don't be complicit in helping jeopardize the public health and the livelihoods of these legitimate business owners. So it all comes down to a simple question. What kind of cannabis marketplace do we want to have in the state of New York? One where chaos reigns and public health is jeopardized and none of these communities that have waited so long see the benefits? Or are we going to build a marketplace where minorities and women-owned businesses, service-disabled, and justice-involved all can thrive? Where consumers know the products are safe. And when I went and visited one of the early ones in Binghamton, people were literally driving hours to get there, except they viewed that as a shorter trip than those from Western New York who are going to Massachusetts. These are people that are suffering from conditions they want relief from. And they were so happy they only had to drive 2.5 hours to Binghamton. Imagine that. The demand is out there. People want help. And it's our job to give it to them. And we also want to make sure that that tax revenue is collected, because we know there's an opportunity here to reinvest that in the communities that were harmed in the past. That is what we're trying to do here. And I think we know the answer. We know which path we want. And we'll get there as soon as we have the power, working with the legislature in the next few weeks, to give states, which is me and us, and the localities the power to padlock the doors of every illicit cannabis shop in the state of New York. That's how we take back our streets. That's how we take back our streets. That's how we build the most equitable cannabis industry in the country. And that's how we invest in the communities it was intended to help. I do want to recognize the support of our business leaders here as well. Kathy Wild, representing the partnership, is here to say that they support our efforts here to build a legal industry, but only support a legal industry and not allow this proliferation that is really damaging the character of so many of our communities as well. People don't want this any longer. And it's incumbent upon all of us to step up, lend our collective voices, which are powerful, and say, we need changes now. At this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the co-owner of Con Bud at the Lower East Side. I just saw it when I was at the Lunar New Year Parade in Chinatown. I was walking past it, actually. I said, I know this guy. Alfredo Anguera? Anguera.
It's close enough.
Close
Nobody
enough.
gets it right.
Close enough. That's right. Try my name.
I spell it wrong all the time.
That's
Go
all
ahead.
right. That's all right.
Thank you so much.
Alfredo, thank you. Thank you.
You're going to have to bear with me because You're going to hear a lot of what the governor had to say in my few remarks. And as a former teacher, I find that repetition is often the way to get information into people's minds the quickest way. So thank you, Governor Hochul, Executive Director Chris Alexander, and the entire OCM team for their dedication and efforts to ensuring a successful New York State cannabis market. As the governor stated, my name is Alfredo Engueda. I'm one of the co-founders of COMBUD, a New York State licensed dispensary located at 85 Delancey Street. Today, I stand before you to shed light on a critical issue that affects not only businesses, but also the very fabric of our communities, the illicit cannabis market. While New York State legalization of cannabis has opened doors, economic opportunities, and righted social wrongs, and strengthened the connection between our upstate farmers and our downstate markets, the shadow of the illicit market has loomed large, posing significant threats to the state's economic sustainability and the overall well-being of our communities. One of the most concerning aspects of the illicit cannabis market is the proliferation of untested products brought in from out of state. These products bypass New York State's rigorous regulatory standards, putting consumers and youth at risk while tarnishing the reputation of the legal cannabis industry. As citizens of this great state, we are all stewards of public health and safety. And as such, we cannot turn a blind eye to the dangers posed by these unregulated and potentially harmful substances. From purely a business perspective, the illicit cannabis market has a profound economic implications for all of us. From upstate farmers who have long been the backbone of our agricultural industry, who instead of reaping the benefits of a thriving legal market are suffering to find markets for their goods, thereby competing with illicit stores who flout the rules and undercut prices. This not only threatens the livelihood of hardworking farmers in our upstate regions, it undermines the economic viability of our rural areas in upstate New York. This is an up and downstate problem. The undermining of a New York market and the burgeoning cannabis market is only further impacted when we look at dispensaries like COMBUD and other card dispensary owners who used their personal savings, who borrowed from friends and family, who emptied out their children's bank accounts and college saving accounts in an effort to jumpstart a new industry in New York, and who are now facing dire immediate economic harm. With bankruptcy looming over their heads, these individuals have invested their time, money, and dreams into a legal cannabis business, only to find themselves undercut and outmaneuvered by illicit operators who have been operating with impunity for far too long. From marketing to store design to retail location to products, the illicit storefront market has flouted every single rule and created an unbalanced market for New York State. Now, to give you an example, our dispensary on the Lower East Side is surrounded by approximately 71 illicit storefront shops within 1,200 feet. Now, if we do the math, and we'll just do a daily average of about $1,000 in sales per day, that equates to roughly about $25 million. And we all know that in Manhattan, that's not even going to cover your rent, so we can roughly estimate that they're making way more than that. Now, that is not a number that I throw out to say COMBUD should be making. That is a number that I throw out to say, what are the farmers losing out on their sales? What are the dispensaries losing out on their sales? How are the employees losing out on their sales? How is the state losing out on their tax revenue? This money was supposed to go back to the local communities in which these dispensaries were situated. So if we just look at the pure economics of it, they are siphoning money from a legal and legitimate system that was meant to rectify the harms that the war on cannabis has created. And it is impossible for any business to survive under these current economic conditions. The economic impact of the illicit market extends far beyond our upstate farmers and legal dispensaries, affecting the quality of life for all New York State residents. From lost tax revenues to diminished investment opportunities, the presence of illicit operators siphons away dollars dedicated to communities the legal dispensaries are located in. taking away valuable city and state resources from our community. We all know the problems that we're facing here in New York State, and as much as I adore Governor Hochul and the work that she's doing, she can be using this time to focus on other problems within the state. This is siphoning resources from us all. We cannot afford to let the illicit market continue to erode the foundation of New York State's economy. Now, with that said, it is essential to recognize that addressing these challenges posed by the illicit cannabis market does not mean returning to the failed policies of the past. No one wants to see a return to the war on drugs or the war on cannabis, which disproportionately targeted communities of color and exacerbated social inequities. We have all seen firsthand the harm mass incarceration has caused on our communities, and no one on this stage wants to return to that. Instead, we propose and support what the governor is proposing. We propose a multifaceted, balanced approach that the governor is spearheading, a plan that combines robust regulatory enforcement that targets the landlords and padlocks the illicit locations, that targets the media platforms that allow them to advertise and to be found on search engines. This, combined with targeted consumer education, reinforcing to the general public that while many of these illicit shops may look legitimate, they in fact are not, and they erode the progress that this administration has put so hard to put forth. Lastly, support programs for the current farmers and dispensaries whose owners and employees are in dire straits. The fight against the illicit cannabis market is a fight for the future of our communities and our economy. By working together to root out illicit operators, support local farmers, and promote responsible legislation, we can build a stronger, safer, and more equitable cannabis industry for generations to come. I'm sorry it took a little bit of time because, yeah.
That was good.
I tried. I wrote that. No, with that said, I have the honor of introducing, now they gave me a little card, but Osbert Odunya. I almost messed it up. And it's weird because I've known Ozzy for 30 years, and he is a very close personal friend. Osbert.
Thank you very much, Alfredo. So first and foremost, I want to say that I'm humbled to be here before you today. I would like to begin by thanking Governor Hochul, Director Chris Alexander, and the Office of Cannabis Management, our fellow card license holders and business owners that are here today as well, and the many cannabis advocates that are present, in addition to everyone else in attendance today. So thank you. My name is Osbert Orduña. I'm a native New Yorker, a service-disabled veteran, and the Chief Executive Officer of The Cannabis Place, a New York State licensed card dispensary based at 7403 Metropolitan Avenue in Middle Village, Queens. Was born and raised in New York City public housing, and I'm honored to be at this podium today. I'm also proud to be a part of several leading advocacy groups in attendance, including the New York Cannabis Retail Association, which is the largest cannabis retail organization in New York, the National Hispanic Cannabis Council Tri-State Chapter, the Service Disabled Veterans and Cannabis Association, and also the Minority Cannabis Business Association. I'd be remiss to not mention that these organizations that I just mentioned all were signatories on the the open letter that we sent to Governor Hochul regarding social media platforms, and they're allowing the proliferation of unlicensed businesses. So thank you, Governor Hochul, for this opportunity. I'm here today as a licensed business owner and as an advocate to address a pressing issue that concerns the safety, integrity, and the future of our community, specifically the proliferation of unlicensed cannabis stores in New York. For those that do not know the difference, let me be clear. We, as a New York State licensed cannabis business, are not the same as the unlicensed storefronts that litter our streets. This is not merely a matter of legality. It is a matter of public health, safety, and the well-being of our society as a whole. Unlicensed storefront operators are those who facilitate their operation, and those who facilitate their operations, like the unscrupulous landlords that lease to them, and the social media companies that are fueling the growth of unlicensed storefronts and directly causing adverse effects to New Yorkers and in every part of the state, must be held accountable. Unscrupulous landlords are profiting from and taking advantage of the public's lack of awareness by allowing unlicensed storefronts to masquerade as legitimate businesses. Social media platforms are profiting off of undermining the hard legalization work that so many advocates collectively fought for by allowing unlicensed cannabis storefronts to engage in false advertising, deceiving and misleading New Yorkers on a daily basis with their search engine and mapping results that direct unknowing New York consumers to shop at unlicensed and illegally operating cannabis stores. The legalization of cannabis in New York was a significant step forward, one that promised to bring about positive change, equity, and economic growth. However, the unbridled spread of unlicensed cannabis stores threatens to undermine the very foundations upon which this progress was built. Unlicensed cannabis stores operate outside of the bounds of the law, evading regulatory oversight and disregarding the stringent standards put in place to protect consumers. They peddle untested, unregulated products, putting the health and safety of our community members at risk. They also have potential products that are contaminated and also have inaccurate potency levels, in addition to brightly colored packaging depicting cartoon characters that's attractive to children, and it adds to the dangers that are posed by these establishments. Furthermore, the unchecked proliferation of unlicensed cannabis stores has far-reaching consequences for our state. It deprives the state of much-needed tax revenue, funds that could be used to support vital public services and community-based initiatives. Unlicensed cannabis stores are directly contributing to furthering the disproportionate impact that so many of our communities already faced by pocketing tax dollars that should be utilized to fund positive and impactful changes in our schools and communities. But perhaps most importantly, the presence of unlicensed cannabis stores sends a message that we, as New Yorkers, are willing to tolerate illicit activity within both our social media platforms and our local communities. That's not acceptable. It normalizes a culture of lawlessness and erodes the trust and cohesion upon which our society is built. This is why enforcement of unlicensed cannabis stores in New York is not just important, but it's absolutely essential. These are not legacy to legal businesses. Let's be clear about that. These are rogue establishments operating with impunity, endangering the health and well-being of our communities and undermining the process that we have all worked so hard to achieve. There are also too many municipalities that have opted out and prevented licensed dispensaries an opportunity to be a proactive part of the community. But they also turn a blind eye to unlicensed operators. And I say to them, you can't have it both ways. These municipalities need to give us an opportunity as well. It is incumbent upon each and every one of us to take a stand and demand the empowerment of our cities and towns to inspect and shut down unlicensed stores by improving funding and coordination between state and local agencies to ensure enforcement efforts are comprehensive, consistent, and effective, while also supporting legal businesses and streamlining the licensing and regulatory process. Together, we can send a powerful message that unlicensed cannabis stores have no place in our communities, and that we're committed to upholding the rule of law and protecting the safety and welfare of all New Yorkers. It is imperative for the legislature, regulatory agencies, and local governments to work collaboratively to ensure the integrity and success of New York's cannabis market. I would like to thank the many advocates, the legislators, the OCM, Director Chris Alexander of the OCM, and the governor, of course, for their combined efforts to build a legal, safe, and regulated market for consumers with true social equity and economic opportunity. I now would like to introduce Sandra Jaquez, the Vice President of the Latino Cannabis Association. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Governor Hochul. Thank you, OCM and Director Chris Alexander, for this opportunity. My name is Sandra Jaquez, and I am the Vice President of the Latino Cannabis Association. We are an association that represents 25 Latino members, women and men, who are all applicants in the great state of New York. As an applicant for a cannabis license in New York, I stand before you today to address a critical issue negatively impacting our city: the operation of illegal cannabis dispensaries. I am extremely concerned about illegal cannabis establishments for the following reasons. First, they undermine the integrity of our legal system and pose significant safety risks to consumers. Without proper regulation and oversight, these dispensaries cannot guarantee the quality and safety of their products, potentially exposing users to harmful substances. Furthermore, illegal dispensaries drain revenue away from legitimate businesses, like ours that are diligently seeking to enter the legal cannabis market. These unregulated entities do not contribute to our local economy, nor do they adhere to the same standards of taxation and compliances that legal businesses are bound by. We firmly believe that the proliferation of illegal cannabis dispensaries hinders the progress of responsible cannabis legislation efforts in New York. Instead of fostering a safe and equitable industry, they perpetuate a culture of underground market activities and exploitation. Our association supports Governor Hochul's proposal to take decisive actions against these illegal operations to protect consumers, support lawful businesses, and uphold the integrity of our burgeoning cannabis industry. And we urge lawmakers to support the plan as well. Time is of the essence, and the longer this goes unaddressed, the more it threatens the survival of our legal cannabis industry in New York. I want to thank Governor Hochul for her leadership and for putting this press conference together and taking action to elevate this as top priority. Thank you once again, and have a great day.